it was just safe in a way that was so subtle that it was like an exhale, I think. And I was like, okay, cool. I guess I'll order something and sit down.
So we talk a lot, and by we I mean like the wider queer community, not just this podcast, although this podcast talks about it a lot as well. We talk a lot about what a tragedy, what a shame it is that we're losing all of these queer bars and clubs. But I think that the bigger tragedy is that we are losing queer cafes. And maybe it's wrong for me to pit them against each other. Maybe it's not an either or. But I think that queer cafes just offer that beautiful intermediate step. Like, they're not as full on or intimidating as a bar or a club. And they're places where you can just go and be. Like, there's no pressure to perform. There's no need to match the doof, doof, doof of the speakers. There's just you, your measly salad, and the comforting hum of conversations that are happening around you. And one of the absolute best queer cafes that ever existed, and I'm not going to hear any counter arguments to that statement, was First Out Café, which was in central London. So before it closed in 2011 to make way for a railway construction project, it was truly a sanctuary. Like, it was a place where you could nervously nurse a cup of tea while pretending to read the free gay magazines that used to exist. You remember the free gay magazines that were everywhere? All the while sneaking glances at the other queers that had found refuge there too, or the queers that were a bit more confident than you were. You could kind of just watch them and be envious of their journey. And it's also where today's guest, drag king extraordinaire, Mr. Wesley Dykes, took his first tentative steps into queerdom. Before they came out to themselves and to others, they would occasionally pluck up the courage to travel into central London, go to Gaze the Word bookshop, and then mosey on down to First Out Café and just observe, just get a look at what was going on. And it was this kind of no pressure, no worries kind of vibe that really helped give them the confidence to come out. Although actually maybe that's not true. You'll have to listen to their coming out story to get a better understanding of what I mean. Anyway, in this conversation, we talk about those early days. We talk about university life in Scotland, and we talk about unpicking and unlearning some of the things that we've been taught our whole lives. Ooh, that sounds a bit deep, really. Okay, let's get into it.
I think I'm just in a place in my life where I'm really unlearning all of these traps of comparison and things that like steal joy from moments, and just giving myself grace and favor that I'm on my own path. And as long as I'm honoring myself by giving myself and my own ideas, creativity, time and energy, then we'll get to where we get to. And like seeing someone who's alongside me succeed just means it's right there also. So which is quite nice. It takes the weight off. It's like unnecessary baggage the other way.
Yeah, it absolutely is. But like, it's so easy to fall victim to it, right? Like, there's
absolutely,
a finite
for sure.
amount of success, and only like 3 people are going to get it, and you want to be one of those 3 people, which is just not the way it is. And like, why do we think of it that way? It's so strange.
It's so strange. And like, once you come out of it as well, you're just like, oh wow, I just put a lot of that on myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why have I? And that's not to say that like people don't say things or you don't experience things in life that like lead you to think a certain way. But then when you're able to shed some of those things and you realize, oh, you're the one that
You're the problem.
decided to take it away, you're like, I'm like, oh, I could have just done that ages ago.
Yeah. Oh, it's tough though. It's tough when you have dreams for yourself. And okay, so I want to find out about little Wesley.
Oh.
Growing up in Southeast London. What was he like?
I was quite a boisterous, like chatty kid. I grew up between Lagos and South London. So like it was literally for a while, it was literally like 1 year here, then like 1 year there, then like 1 year here, 1 year there, back and forth. And so yeah, I was quite social. I was quite social. I loved dancing. Just a generally quite excitable kid. But my family's West African, so in a lot of ways there was also already a sense of like a gendered version of the world that I was being led down, where like some of those aspects of my personality weren't always encouraged, like in the same way if I was like a young boy or something like this. Yeah.
Well, and was that something that you were aware of and like trying to avoid, or did that moderate your behavior, change the way you approach the world? Sorry, that was such a like overly complex way of saying. What did that feel like?
It's cool, we got there. I was definitely aware of it. Obviously, I didn't have the language to describe it, but when I was in Nigeria, I grew up with my 2 younger cousins, and in London with my 2 younger brothers. I was definitely acutely aware that my brothers and my cousins were being treated differently to me, not in any sort of wider way, just in an individual, like, I don't get it, we're all kids kind of way, what's happening here. And it definitely did moderate my behavior. It's definitely affected the way I move through the world up until this point in my life now, to be honest. Only the past few years that I've been able to like really inhabit my body and engage with like what some of those experiences felt like, and like soothe that younger version of myself that it's okay. I can't help being myself, so like I can feel and remember flashes of myself at all times, always trying to be myself, but I also very much know the places where that was like pressed down or compressed, and I felt like, oh, I have to be a bit lesser of this in this moment. And then you forget, because you're a kid, you forget everything after 5 seconds. Yeah.
But I feel like there's maybe two, I'm going to like really oversimplify it, and I'm going to think of a third option, like in 5 hours time, I'm going to bolt upright in bed and think of a plethora of other options. But I feel like there's 2 ways that kids can approach that, right? Like there's the push myself down, minimize myself, be the thing that people want me to be. And then you learn that and you kind of crook your body into a particular shape, and then you just have that shaped body forever. Oh, I don't know where I'm going with that. And then the other option
great
is
visual.
You try to push it down, you try to minimize yourself, but the real you leaks out in all these weird spots and like goes everywhere, and then you you basically fail. But in failing, you've actually honored yourself. It's this kind of weird way. So we were going to talk about binaries, and there were those 2 options. Which would be the one that describes your situation?
I don't do very well with binaries. So I think it's actually this thing of being contorted in a box that's leaking. You know, it's got like the oil stains on the corners. Yeah. And you're just like, you're trying to stay in there, but like actually...
So it's the worst of both worlds.
It's the worst of both worlds. It's the worst of both worlds. Because I think also I was very much a tomboy. I was very much into I wanted to do the things that the boys wanted to do in very like normative gendered ways. I was really pushing back against a lot of femininity and this kind of thing. And that was despite getting into a lot of trouble for like not always dressing the way they wanted me to dress or acting the way they wanted me to act. To some extent, I did have limits until what I would accept, where I would just be like, I'm not going there. If you're going to make me wear that, I'm not going to go. Like there would be moments like that where it was just like, you're asking too much for me to not be like myself. But they weren't like these sort of active protests. They were just literally like, the box is too tight and you're trying to make it smaller and you need to relax because you're already asking too much. There's this sort of like kind of feeling, I think. Yeah.
And how did that impact on the relationships you had with the people around you?
Yeah, I think it just made it very limited and closed off. A bit cold, probably, because I just didn't really have much trust in most people that were around me in that way. Like they looked after me in the ways that they knew how. Like they cared for me. I was fed, I was looked after, and people sort of generally knew where I was and this kind of thing. But I'd say I just didn't allow myself to be known in a lot of ways because I didn't feel safe enough, basically.
Yeah, that's tough, isn't it?
And
have you unlearned that as an adult?
I think I'm working on it. I'm working on it. It's a work in progress. It's definitely in the best place it's ever been, for sure. But it's almost like an everyday decision, everyday choice to be like present and active in my life enough to be able to choose in every situation, oh, make sure to look after yourself here. Make sure you look after yourself here. Like every time that kind of thing comes up. So it's quite an active process for me at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, and it feels really uncomfortable to take up as much space as everyone else.
Yeah.
And like it shouldn't. It's like, you have this much, I should have this much, this person should have this much. But you're like, oh, maybe if you just give me 20% of what everyone else has, I can make do. It's okay. Ugh. Sorry, this is turning into therapy.
No, it's fine. Chatting will do that.
Well, and so you've said that you were always a tomboy and interested in the masculine, stereotypically masculine things when you were growing up. At what point did that parlay into, do you know what? I might not be heterosexual.
Oh, to be honest, I think the first flutterings of knowing, I don't think I'm quite feeling the thing I'm supposed to be feeling here. I was probably like 8 or something like this. I was quite young. I don't even know if there was anyone particular. Yeah, I don't know that any person stands out that strongly. I think it's more so I'd clocked things in the media, like, because regardless of where I was, there was a lot of British or American TV available. So just like TV shows and cartoons like this. And I was aware of how people spoke about it in church, about it, and the negative things attached to it. And I knew I was sort of afraid of what they were describing. But I don't necessarily know that I yet knew that it was like gayness or something like this.
Well, so let's talk about that then. So you were afraid of what they were describing. Were you afraid of what they were describing because it was something other, something foreign, something distant that was like scary and threatening, or because you recognized some of the things that they said in yourself?
Yeah, so some of the ways they would be homophobic, I mean. Like if something came on TV or something like that, or in an advert, or some, the negative reactions they would have to it, or just talking about hell in church, for example, and all these people go to hell, and being like 8 or 9 or 10 years old, and whatever your construction of that in your mind is at that age. I was aware that I was afraid because of that thing, even though I didn't really know what homosexuality was. I sort of was like, I feel like I might be part of this crew that's going to hell for this thing. Yeah.
So it wasn't that, like, it was something that you'd been told your whole life and you'd kind of just accepted because that's what kids do when they go to church and they're told this is this and this. You go like, cool. And then one day the flip switched and you were like, oh, hang on, maybe I'm going to hell with them. It was like you always just had this sense.
Yeah, definitely. I don't have much memory of not having that knowing in my body.
Oh, that's so interesting. I mean, that's really hard to unpick. And so sorry, I'm asking follow-up questions.
It's okay.
Do you think that it was because of the way that other humans responded to you?
Obviously, I'm an adult looking back on like a kid's memory.
Yeah.
But I think it's more so just about cultural, like gendered projections on kids. So there's just a lot of like already talking about little boyfriends, little girlfriends, always hanging out together, or those two are going to get married, or even when our kids are talking about playing mummies and daddies and that kind of thing. And even if I'm playing, being aware that I'm like, this doesn't really excite me in any way in the way that you all seem to be excited about it. Yeah.
Just a quick side note, do you think kids nowadays play mummies and daddies? Like, it's not
I think so.
Very aspirational.
I mean, to us. No. Maybe. I think we're not the target market.
But yeah, that's so interesting then, that you just always had that sense of like, no, this isn't for me. But after that kind of switching on or illumination at age of 8, how long did you sit with that on your own before you spoke to someone?
Oh boy. Oh, I didn't come out to myself properly until I was like 19.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Ooh, so then what does that look like? What do your teenage years do?
They're pretty typical teenage years, except I just didn't really do any of the like dating people stuff. But it's mostly just friends and going out and having crushes on people and not telling them, and being cool and uncool in school and all that kind of stuff.
Well, at least you got to be cool for a while.
Yeah, a little bit.
But so you said you didn't come out to yourself until you were 19.
Yeah.
And so when you were having these crushes on people, okay, so this is questions coming from my experiences. So sorry if I sound really ignorant.
No, you're good.
Was, for me, like having the crushes on people and coming out to myself kind of just happened at the same time.
Okay.
So whenever I hear of people, like when there's a time delay, I'm like, but how does that actually work? So that's where my questioning is coming from. So you like had these crushes on people. Well, what did you tell yourself? Like, and how did you respond? I
think it was just, I just kept it to myself. Sometimes there were people that they were just my friends. And so I was just aware that I really, really liked my friends. Just really liked people a lot. But yeah, I just mostly kept them to myself, really.
But and so there was no self-shame necessarily attached to it. It was...
There was some shame because my family is really religious, and so Christianity is present throughout this whole story, like church is present throughout this whole story. So there's this like ever-present looming judgment thing that's sort of always coming through, even though that thing by itself is already challenging me in terms of what is my personal faith. Like I'm like, I don't even know if I believe in your God or whatever, but it's still this looming thing that's making me feel fearful in a way that I think then I attached to religion, but now I just attached to a disconnect from my family because they're so intertwined that I was being afraid to lose them because of this thing. I was under the banner of like losing them to God in a sort of way. That's huge. That's so huge. Yeah. So then coming out at 19, what is that to yourself? What is the bargaining? What is the rationing? Like, what is the conversation that you have with yourself? Well, I think at that point, I just didn't even have a choice because I'd just I went out with the rugby team the night before and they'd obviously just gotten me absolutely trashed. And I didn't even drink before uni, really. I had my first drink at uni. Yeah, the year before. So I just got absolutely trashed, and I think I came out while I was really wasted, but I didn't remember any of it. So I woke up the next day and basically everyone else knew that I was like officially gay, but I didn't yet know. And then someone on my team had told me the shenanigans of the night before, and I was like, oh, okay. So I guess that's happened.
But you had a choice there. You could have just been like, I was really drunk and denied it.
But I wasn't yet in that, because that's a drinking culture thing. Like, I feel like you have to have drunk for a long enough time to be able to know that you can almost like make excuses on drinking. I was not yet that experienced in the culture of drinking.
So okay, describe to me then how that feels to be told that and to like have had that kind of taken away from you, even though you're the person that said it.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. I think it was just a bit sobering, pun intended. But it was a bit of an exhale, a little bit of an exhale, because I still didn't come out to my mum like until like 8 years later. But it was definitely like a bit of an exhale to just like, okay, now I'm at uni and I'm somewhere where I can start trying out this thing. Because even then, even being at uni, I was still very aware of myself, still very aware of how I was seen in public and who saw me in public and who would tell who about what, and just being like sort of like, yeah.
But even though you were like, this is when you were in Scotland.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. So even though you were like on the other side of the country and like no one knew you apart from people at university, you were still very like
hyper aware of myself, very much so. Took a long time to, even now still, it's probably I'm at the best point it's ever been in my life, but I still have to tell myself sometimes to like relax and like it's okay, just like chill.
Like when you're out in public.
Yeah, if I'm out in public with like presenting super queer, or like I have like really queer stuff on, or I'm carrying a queer thing, it's like I can't necessarily 100% do that absent-mindedly.
Because someone that you know might see you? Or because you're worried about your... Okay.
Yeah, because somebody I know might see me. Safety too, but that's probably like a slightly lesser element than the fact that somebody I know might see me, and I have to like possibly being in a situation where I need to stand my ground for myself.
Yeah. Well, okay, so back to Scotland, back to university. You've come out... Have you come out? Or yes, you have come out. You've been told that you came out. What steps do you then take to figure this out and to like practice your newfound queerness? I
mean, I was on so many sports teams, so there was a whole bunch of lesbians around. Like it was already, that's what I mean, where I was already
a built-in
like
dating pool.
I was already sort of like living the world, because I couldn't, those were the things I was attracted to doing, like whether or not I associated them with being queer or whatever. I was finding myself often in spaces with those sorts of people anyway. So that's why it was so much more of an internal conversation with myself, because I think it's one of those ones where lots of other people would already have read me as being gay in some way. But because my family's West African, sometimes people forget that some of the things they consider queer markers aren't queer markers for everybody else. And so in the family, I'm just the tomboy or the alternative artist one. It doesn't mean that they're reading it in like a gay way. So even having people being like, oh, it's like super obvious, was also quite like, oh, this is very interesting.
And is that reassuring or is it kind of insulting?
No, definitely not insulting. Is it reassuring? Is it reassuring? I don't know. I think I just thought it was interesting culturally. Yeah.
But does that then suddenly make lots of yourself make sense?
I don't think so. Because I don't think the issue was ever that I didn't feel like I made sense. It was that I felt like I didn't have space to be myself, or that I had to choose between being myself and being like a part of my family or succeeding in life. But I don't think I was ever thinking I don't make sense.
That's healthy. That's weird. that's nice to hear. Well, okay, and so the like becoming queer. Do you become queer, or are you always queer?
I feel like
the practicing queer.
The practicing queer. I think that's the one.
So you had this kind of built-in network with all the sports teams you were on. Were you like tentative in finding out more, or?
Yeah, very, very tentative for sure. I didn't date tons. I was very tentative because I was also just emotionally distrustful of people, I think. And so, as well as being young, inexperienced in sort of generally dating, because for some people they come out, they're young, but also they've dated teenage boys or whatever when they were young, so they've already sort of like done things like that. I hadn't really done things like that, so there was like lots of layers to why I wasn't necessarily diving right into dating in this way.
Why do you say you were mistrusting?
I think I just found people to be very odd. We were in uni, everyone's like 18, 19, 20, they're all drinking tons. They're like arguing lots and having like very silly arguments about silly things that I just don't understand what's happening. I found it all very, like, just the social interaction of it all was just very...
Too much.
I literally didn't understand it. And I was like, I don't get what you guys are doing. You want to sleep with each other, but you don't want to...
But you hate
each other, but you're dating, but you're not dating. And like, I actually don't get it. So it was hard for me to participate.
So I'm guessing then that you don't watch any soap operas.
Not many. And at that age, I was just...
That's quite admirable, I think.
I don't think it was my choice, though.
Into all that. I get sucked into all that shit so easily. And for you to just be like, oh, do you know what? This looks like it's too much emotional work. I'm not going to be bothered with this. That's really good.
I just didn't understand it. And then as soon as I did date somebody, then we dated for a while because I was just like, okay, I'm in something now. And then that was my dating for a while, which is also very gay. Just like meet somebody interesting, end up in a relationship, break up, meet someone else interesting, end up in a relationship. But that was just happened later.
But that's...
Everyone's going to be like, did you start a dating podcast? What is this about?
No. What are your views on that kind of approach to dating now? Sorry, this is very leading question.
I'm actually on the dating break, so I just needed to hang out with myself. I think that was happening because I was still learning I could want things, that I could like want things in the future. And so I'd meet somebody, they were cool, I'd be like, okay, this is cool. You want to date? Sure, let's give it a go. I was just like giving things a go as opposed to sense checking whether I actually am interested in this in any way or form. And I think, you can do sense check dating, but you should probably be a bit more, as long as you're aware that you're doing it, I think it's fine. I don't think I was aware that I was doing it. I think I was just sort of slipping into things and being like, oh shit, it's been 2 years. Oh my God.
Oh, we have a joint mortgage.
Like, what? Damn.
I think there maybe are some schools that do classes on like healthy relationships or something, but I feel like it should be like a proper... if I was running a school, the curriculum would be amazing, I tell you what. But yeah, I feel like you really should learn about these things and like how to, like what questions you should be asking yourself when you start dating someone.
Exactly.
And like how to reevaluate things as they progress and change and they expose who they really are. And you've just signed a 12-month lease and you realize that you've got nothing in common with this person, and how do you extricate yourself from the relationship?
Exactly.
That would be much more handy than Pythagoras' theorem, I have to say.
Literally. They just don't have the priorities right at all. And I think people also do forget that or maybe not forget, but don't think about the fact that for people who come out in families where their families are homophobic, or they don't want them to be gay, or even if, let me say, they tolerate them.
Ugh, I hate that word.
I know, but it's almost like that word actually quite accurately describes what it feels like to be tolerated. But yeah, you miss out on some of these conversations that come up with heteronormativity. Like, not that everyone gets those conversations, but when people are thinking you're going to get a husband or get a wife and have 2 kids and a picket fence, then much younger people are like, so do you have a boyfriend? Well, if you're going to have a boyfriend, you should think about this. They give away advice to you on the life that they think you're going to lead. But when they don't want you to live the life that you want to, they can't advise you on it, and they don't try to because they're often avoiding the conversation. So how can they even give you any life advice? And so you do end up doing a lot of stuff on your own and figuring out a lot of stuff on your own.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point. I think the other thing is maybe that they don't recognize some of the differences in those types of relationships. Maybe I'm talking absolute shit, actually. But like, if you're in a heterosexual relationship and you're hanging around your parents for the weekend or whatever, and they notice some odd behaviors between you and your partner, then they'll pick up on that easier because they'll be familiar with the dynamics and what's supposed to happen, in inverted commas. But in like a queer pairing or a polycule even, they might not understand those things, so they might not be able to recognize them in order to then say, oh, I noticed this happened, and maybe it's a problem, maybe you should not be with that person. Exactly though, but that's exactly what I mean. It's tough because you need that support, and in a way it's not necessarily their fault that they don't see those signs, because you see signs and patterns when you see something often. But also, who has to hold the accountability for that? Because you just end up holding it yourself. You have to learn the lesson yourself. You have to soothe yourself from the lesson. You have to, it's just you dealing with it. And you're young, like being in your early 20s, mid 20s, dating. And that's not, you haven't experienced that much life. There's also this additional layer of it where a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people are like, I'm going to prove how successful I am as a gay man or as a lesbian or as a queer person, and I'm going to have this amazing relationship and I'm going to show them. And so you're far more guarded of things that are going wrong, or you're far less likely to address them because you want this veneer of like this perfect relationship happening, so that everyone can see that actually, despite everything, you're fine, which then just fucks you up for the next decade.
Exactly.
Or so, I guess.
So many.
Right. Okay. So let's leave Scotland. You've graduated university. You come back to London after university?
For like a few months, maybe. I moved to Canada in the September. I graduated in like June. I moved to Canada in September.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where does First Out Café come into this? Does it come in after Canada?
No, First Out Café comes in before uni, actually.
Oh, what?
Yeah, it comes in before uni. I don't think I've left for uni yet. I think I've started sort of looking up things in the internet for like gay things and like lesbian things, and I found Gay's the Word and I found First Out. And so I sort of like sometimes go into London on my own, and usually I'll go to Gay's the Word, have a little wander around, maybe buy a little diva magazine or something. Then I'll like go to First Out Cafe and just sit and read it and like just be in the cafe.
Okay, so I think maybe I've misunderstood.
Okay.
When you said you came out at 19 to yourself,
yeah,
I thought that up until then there had been no No internal monologues about potentially.
Okay. No.
I thought you'd been like suppressing it down, and even though you'd had those feelings, you weren't brave enough to say it to yourself. But here you are, like going around town, popping in, buying a lesbian magazine, being seen by people buying a lesbian magazine. That's pretty much... Okay, all right.
Yeah. It almost like existed in its own parallel universe of my life. Like those moments where I would sort of just go for a wander. They didn't really exist anywhere else, really, or connected to anyone or anything. I hadn't spoken to anyone about it in any way. I don't even know if I'd said it out loud.
Yeah.
I just was like, let me go look.
Yeah, but something compelled you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you remember then that first time going into First Out?
Oh, the first time. I don't know if I remember.
Okay, then not the first time. Do you remember like finding out about it and planning to go there?
Yeah.
And what that felt
Definitely. It was quite adventurous, really. It was quite
fucking brave.
Yeah, it was kind of like an adventure, like, because it wasn't unusual for me to go into London on my own. It was already kind of time that was personal or like private to me anyway, where I just go off into London. And back when I still enjoyed wandering through the tourists, so it was just like a sort of another mission of this place that I'd heard about. Yeah, I remember sort of going there and like looking around the area, trying to be like, oh, where is this little place? And then like spotting it. Even now in my memory, it kind of looks like very like old. Like the filter on it is like EastEnders. It's like...
What does that mean?
It just looks like very classic in my mind. Like the memory of like looking around, looking for the white sign of the black writing, I think, if I'm remembering that correctly. It looks like a vintage film in my mind. Not like really old or whatever, just like, think early 2000s, like late 90s television.
Oh no.
That's the filter.
I hate that is vintage.
We can't lie, man. We can't lie. It was very like what's the word? Anticlimactic. It was very anticlimactic going inside.
Oh.
Not in a bad way, in a good way. It was exactly, I was anticlimactic in the way I needed it to be. It was just like a cafe. That was what was so good about it. Like it was.
Well, then that leads me to ask the question, what were you expecting?
I don't know. I didn't really have any things to base anything off of, really, I think. I hadn't been in any like queer or LGBT venues of any things like that. I don't know what I thought it would be like.
But it was more exciting than just a cafe.
Yeah, exactly. Because it was just there was clearly like couples in the corner. The flyers that were like on the side were like meet-up groups and like queer this, little rainbow. It was just safe in a way that was so subtle that it was like an exhale, I think. And I was like, okay, cool. I guess I'll order something and sit down.
And then how did the rest of that trip go? Did you just eat the thing you ordered and then leave?
Yeah, just like drank my little thing, read my magazine, then went home.
I think that is I love queer cafes and I love having them, but I think that is the problem with them, is that you think people are going to come and talk to you and they don't, because they're doing their own shit.
Exactly. I don't even know if I wanted anyone to talk to me, you know. I think I would probably have just been a mess, a social, and don't know what I would have even said if anyone did speak to me. I was just happy to put down the weight of like thinking about this thing, and I was like, oh, I don't have to carry that around. Just for a moment while I'm here, I can just put this down and not be like hyper aware of it.
Oh
yeah.
And you felt that?
Yeah, definitely. Because it was just such a regular cafe. It was just like Because sometimes even when you're, well, not sometimes, but for people who dress a bit more alternatively or people who are more outwardly queer, you step into what's meant to be a sort of like just an establishment of anything, coffee, restaurant, whatever, and you do get a sense that like, oh, these people don't interact with non-normies that much, do they? They're a little bit like shook by your one septum ring, like, okay guys, it's okay. But it was just none of that was present at First Out, none of that energy at all. They didn't even look at you twice, and it was nice.
And what changed that day?
Honestly, at that point, it was just knowing that it existed as a place I could go to. I don't know that it rippled through my life that strongly outside of just positing a sort of safe haven in my brain that I could always sort of like, if I needed to just ground myself for a minute in like whatever's happening, I could just be like, okay, other people like this exist, so just chill. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So what was the pattern then? Like, did you go back there often or?
Yeah, pretty much. I think because it wasn't too long until I went to uni, I think after I first discovered it. And then that might actually be, God, my memory. That year, my first year, was when I came out to myself. And then pretty much whenever I would come home, I would try and get to First Out Café. And then by the time I graduated, that was the year it closed. And I came looking for it and the building was shut. Yeah. And I was just like, oh, I felt it actually in my chest. I felt it. I was just like, oh.
Oh, so you hadn't heard that it had shut. You'd gone there expecting the same pattern of Diva magazine reading.
It'd been like maybe 2 years now, I think. When did I graduate? Like maybe 2-3 years of going there. Yeah, whenever I was home. And then I got there and it was just like, oh, closing down. Oh shit.
So what are the thoughts when you realised that it had closed?
At that point, I had definitely done a bit more going to other things and stuff, and so I'd been in other spaces and like had some especially because I was a young person, so there were a few more sort of like creative like spaces that existed you could sort of pop into at that time. But I was just it hurt. It would hurt. It was sore. I can't imagine for people who were locals or who were in London all the time and got to go like regularly. But for someone who was only going a few times a year anyway, I felt like there was a hole in like the scene, in the community from like that place closing. Yeah.
Massive. And it's never been replaced, really.
I doubt they'd be able to afford the rent, or anybody could afford the rent in that area. And one of the other... something I was reading was talking about how somebody was saying they probably wouldn't go into central London now because First Out was closed, so they have no other reason to go in. And I kind of felt similar about where it was, where I was just like, I literally have no other business in this area except coming to this cafe. So like, what am I going to come here for now? Yeah.
And so with your experiences there, going whenever you got the opportunity to get a magazine, sit down. Did you eat quiche there? I feel like
I might have had a quiche there, you know. That is actually a very real possibility.
Just think about quiche whenever I think about that place. I don't know why. Anyway, so like with those experiences, what do you think they taught you about yourself?
I think it just goes back to me not being able to help myself. I think some people can, unfortunately, tuck themselves away inside and really cosplay this life through all the bullshit. And I think that those moments or those years are just another example of me sort of like working with what I had and like just pushing through the blocks or the things that had been put up, and me just still trying to come through, still trying to look after myself, basically, and soften these fears that had been planted in some way by just looking for something to try and help me out.
If you think back to that person, the person who, like, on that first time that you ever went to First Out Café, what do you think of them?
I mean, I think they're probably braver than I thought they were. Because actually, for how scared I was most of the time, that was quite a big deal to do that, to go looking in that way.
Yeah.
I'd probably have to give them their props in that respect.
Do you think you're braver now or less brave?
I think I'm getting braver. I think I'm definitely braver now and trying to be even braver.
Ooh, that's good to hear. How, like, are you making conscious steps to become braver, or like, how do you become braver?
I think being braver comes with cementing your values. Like, what is it that you stand for? Like, who do you want to be, like, in the world and as a person? Like, when you lay your head to bed at night, how do you want to feel about, like, who you've been throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the year? And I think as I try and lock those things down for myself, then I have more of a foundation to stand on for, like, how I want to act and who I want to be in certain situations. So I think that's where I'm trying to support myself in being braver.
And that is us for yet another week. Oh, actually, before I say anything else, if you're listening to this episode because you have an affiliation or a love or a deep-seated passion for First Out Café, then I see you. I am on the exact same page as you, but also you're in luck because there are other episodes of the Lost Spaces podcast that are about the First Out Cafe, including like one of the very first episodes, like maybe episode 2 or 3, all the way back at the beginning of the archive. If you want to listen to these, then I will make sure to include more details in the show notes for this episode. And if you loved this chat, then why not go and give some love to Wesley on Instagram. He can be found at Mr Wesley Dykes. And you can also find me on TikTok and Instagram at Lost Spaces Pod. Well, it's been fun, but I will now let you back out into the world, and hopefully I'll see you here again next week. Bye now.